Governments deny it. Militaries deny it. Even the mainstream media denies it. But they are here, and they've been here for a very long time. The Mutual UFO Network has been on the front lines uncovering the truth since 1969. And now we're sharing that truth with you. Welcome to MUFON What's Up with your hosts, Katie Page, Christopher DePerno, and Tara Diulis. Exclusively on the KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. Wondering what's up? So are we.
What's up? It is Tuesday night, and you're listening to MUFON What's Up Radio, the show that says discovery starts with curiosity, and curiosity starts with MUFON. Brought to you by KGRADB.com. As always, we're endorsed by the Mutual UFO Network, MUFON, asking that all-important question, are we alone in the universe? I am your host, Katie Page, the Colorado MUFON State Director. We got a little bit of snow up here in the mountains, but not too much, just enough to get out of the driveway, and roads are clear. I hope you guys all had a fantastic weekend. Getting into that holiday spirit, doing some Christmas shopping and putting up that tree and all that good stuff, and that you're having a great week as well. We have a great guest for you tonight. We have Richard Beckwith. He is the state director for MUFON. So 3 MUFON state directors here tonight. We have Chris DePerno. Let's bring him on in. He is the state director of New York, and he has Jerry and Jenna with him as well. And we also have, hey, how you doing, Jerry, Jenna, Chris?
No.
They want to go to Aspen?
He got a WWI. And he wants me to ask Richard if he will represent him. I said no. I said,
right. That's right.
WWI, warping while intoxicated.
Warping while intoxicated. No, that's funny.
Yeah, he didn't tell me about it when he came back from vacation. No. Anyways, we're going to have a great show tonight. It's going to be awesome. Richard Beckwith is one of the oldest MUFON people there is. He's been there from God knows, I think the beginning of it. He's done incredible work. He has been with incredible people, and the information he's going to share tonight, well, all you can say is incredible.
He's not that old. You're making him sound really old, Chris. He's not.
I didn't say he was old. I just said
he's the oldest member of MUFON ever.
You know, he didn't walk in the studio with a cane or crutch or a wheelchair, so he's in good shape. He's all right.
He's in good shape. He's awesome. He's super cool, and I can't wait to have him on. You're so funny. But I don't know if Richard he's a lawyer, and I don't know if he represents ETs or not. We'll have to ask him about that. Let's bring out our other co-host, Tara Diulis. Tara, how you doing?
Hi, I'm doing great.
Awesome.
Richard didn't look that old to me either.
No, he's not. He's not.
I didn't say he was old. I said
the oldest MUFON. I was thinking, really, huh?
I'm glad you got us started off laughing. I needed a good laugh. I know Chris has been fighting a little bit of cold. A lot of people out there are fighting like the flu and COVID. You're fighting COVID.
The whole pandemic, I never got COVID, right?
Until now.
All of a sudden, now when everything dies down, guess what? I got COVID.
Murphy's Law. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you're toughing it up and being here for all of us. I'm feeling a bit under the weather too. So do you have your hot tea? We're here on KGRA with soup.
No, but it's great to get away from my wife.
I got my hot tea.
Yes.
No, I got my water, but it's great to get away from my wife. My wife can't. I'm quarantined. You know, she's in one room, I'm in another, and we pass notes to each other. Are you still alive? Yes. I'm still alive too. Okay.
It's usually the guys that are the bigger babies when they're sick, right, Tara? I mean, I'm just saying.
No comment.
No comment.
What you're talking about?
I don't think you better comment on that one. I'm doing okay. I'm here.
You look great.
That's great. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so Tara, what do you have to kick us off tonight?
Oh, well, first let me say happy holidays. And I've been seeing everybody driving around with Christmas trees on top of their vehicles. So yeah, I was assuming maybe the UFOs do it too. Hey, Amanda, can you show that up? I love this meme. So what it shows is vehicles driving along with Christmas trees tied to the top of their roofs of their cars. And directly above them is a UFO with a Christmas tree tied to its dome. And the alien inside is saying to the other one, What? I thought it would help us blend in.
That's so true up here in the mountains. Everybody's cutting down these beautiful trees. And I don't know. I love a live Christmas tree. The smell, it's wonderful. But there's a part of me that gets a little sad. These trees took so long to grow, and then they use them for, a month. I guess
you got to consider the health of the forest, I guess. And some thinning is good. So.
That's true. That's true. And they grow them specifically for that.
Well, some of them, it's fun to get trees. Well, I also have a baker's dozen of images to show you. And occasionally at the Phoenix MUFON meetings, and Amanda, you can pull those up if you'd like, we make cookies for our guests. And I thought I'd share some of these fun alien cookies with you. And they are made with raspberry jam, sometimes blackberry raspberry jam. And they're just really fun. I like to decorate them, and you can get different personalities in all of them and just have fun with them. I also do some with the Sasquatches, and I think I've done some feet and some of them. You can change their legs and how they're running and stuff. It's just kind of fun. But I just thought you guys might enjoy seeing all of these. And again, it's just the baker's dozen of cookies, and they taste so yummy, I think. So
I do.
Enjoy them.
I was really lucky when I went there to Phoenix to speak, and I don't remember what the event was, but it was your annual cookie time event. So I got to take some of those home and taste some of them, and they're really delicious.
They're real fun.
What's your favorite?
Really good.
What is your favorite, Tara?
My favorite what?
Cookie.
Of all time?
Cookies.
Of all time, I like peanut butter cookies.
Do you?
Yes, I do. I enjoy peanut butter cookies.
So we'll have to get you some alien peanut butter cookies.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Jerry, get on that.
I like any cookie, really. There's never met a cookie I didn't like. So, and we can't forget about the Paranormal Pops, though. There's a Bigfoot Christmas card for this year. And if you order soon, I think they can arrive before Christmas. It's vanilla, and these are all gluten-free. But these types of fun, wonderful, edible gifts can be found at paranormalpops.com. So check them out, you guys. It's really fun. So
all sorts of goodies.
Yeah, all good stuff. Chris, what do you have for us in the news today?
The news. I got to get the
news.
Let's gear up for the news.
Wait a minute. I got to get my glasses on.
There you are.
Yeah, there I am.
Peter.
News. All right, let's start with this story. I like this story.
Okay.
A toppled statue was spotted on Mars. A Mars photo hunter scoured NASA images from Mars, spotted a particular formation which seems to resemble a toppled statue. UFO researcher Scott Waring noticed the unusual object in a photo that was captured by the space station's Curiosity rover back in early November. While zooming in on a sizable image, which provides a large look of the Martian horizon, he caught sight of a face like none other he's ever found before. I don't know how many faces you find on Mars, so I don't know. Seemingly wedged sideways in the crevice on the side of the mountain, the intriguing oddity appears to sport two eyes, a nose, a mouth, a headpiece akin to a crown, which led Waring to conclude that the object is a statue of an ancient Martian, presumably of some importance. As for how this piece wound up in its particular position, he believes that it fell from its original position at the top of the mountain at some point in the distant past. Of course, skeptical observers will argue that while this may have been how an object, where it is merely a rock that only resembles a face. Now, wait a minute. Look at that picture there. I'm not going to even comment on that one. Anyways, with that in mind, what is your take on Waring's latest find? Wait a minute. This just coming in. Oh, my God. Hold on a second. NASA is just reporting they found another face on Mars. And it's supposed to be like a high priest or something. Let me get that on there. There it is. NASA's new photo of a statue of Mars. All right.
Good one.
I'm going to Venus.
That's hilarious.
There on Mars, I'm going to Venus. I love you, Bill. You know that. Right. Amanda, roll that video.
Hey guys, how's it going? This is Sky. I was looking at some Mars Gigapan photos and I discovered something on the edge of one of the hills. a broken sculpture had fallen from higher up and got lodged between a rock and the hillside itself. Now, I added some color to it, as you can see on the left side of the screen over here, and I did not try to make it artistic. I was not trying to make it realistic. I was just trying to separate the pieces of it that was really intriguing to me. And the hat, many of the faces we found, and many others, people have found faces on Mars with crowns, hats. Maybe they are ceremonial or something. A lot of them have had something that looked like a jewel or a third eye between the eyes. This one, you can see the eyes in blue. I colorized the lips pink because I really wanted to stand out. Now, it doesn't look like they're pink originally. I would say they match the rest of the face, and this creature, this face, doesn't look humanoid at all. It looks, reptilian maybe? Is really unusual. It really is. You can see the folds of the skin going across the face. See the folds? And you can see these long areas around where there could be ears. It could be a large flap of skin coming down. So whatever it is, it's hard to say what it is exactly, but it does look like an ancient sculpture. Now look at this eye. You say it's off because, well, it's fallen down and the eye area has actually hit this huge side of the mountain, which is made of a hard material, it looks like. And it's broken. The eye is actually broken, a little bit loose, and began to tilt. So that's why the eye here is tilting and out of sorts, out of balance. But to me, this looks like an alien sculpture.
This could be gills on the side.
Yes.
I hope it looks like an alien because it looks like my brother-in-law. But anyway, what the hell's he doing up there? What do you think?
I don't know if anybody knows, but I was head of this very small little project for a while within MUFON, and we named it SOMA, which was Space, Moon, Mars Anomalies that were taken off of the Mars rovers and the Google Moon, the lunar surfaces. And so a lot of these pictures that would come into MUFON, we didn't know what to do with them. So, they would send them to me. I would respond to the people that sent them, like, thanks for sending these. We really can't investigate them because they're off planet. We don't have investigators up there on the Mars or the moon, but we will follow them away. So I have a whole bunch of these photographs, and a lot of them can be, matrixine or that parabolia where we see faces and rocks and shadows and things like that. But some of them actually were quite intriguing. Some of them look metallic. So I'm one of those people that I'm kind of open to the idea that there could have been a civilization on Mars. What do you think, Tara?
I agree with you. I'm a dreamer, and I think it would be wonderful if there were a civilization there. And it would make sense that they would have art, made out of stone. So if it is something, it would last all these years and stuff. But, it's interesting how he colored it in, and that helped me see it a lot better, actually. Right. So it's cool. Yeah. It's very cool.
Yeah.
I'm still a little skeptical until I see a toilet or a fast food restaurant. One of the two. And then I know there was some
the golden arches sticking up. There they are.
Two things that a civilization's got to have is a potty and fast food.
Coffee.
Have you seen any place that doesn't? Anyway, let's get on to the second story. Here we go. Is sci-fi tractor beams now a reality? Scientists devise hand-free way to move objects using sound waves. People in the future could be able to move their items without ever touching them. Researchers from the University of Minnesota have created a new method for moving objects hands-free using ultrasound waves. With more research coming, this novel approach could become a common sight in manufacturing and robotics industry, where devices would need a built-in power source to move an object. Previous studies have shown the light and sound waves can manipulate objects. However, these objects needed to be smaller than the wavelength or of sound or light. The current study expands on these findings with the new method capable of moving larger objects. The method is based on the principles of metamaterial physics. Metamaterials are designed to interact with waves of like light and sound. When a metamaterial pattern is on the surface of an object, humans can use sound to move it in a specific direction without touching it at all. We have known for a while that while waves and light and sound can manipulate objects, what sets our research apart is that we can manipulate and trap much bigger objects if we make their surface a metamaterial surface or a metasurface. Says senior author, here we go, chopping this name up, Origin, something like that, Lilac, an assistant professor in the Department of Mechanical Engineering. They don't ever hire anybody by the name of John Smith. When we place these tiny patterns on the surface of these objects, we can basically reflect the sound in any direction we want. And in doing that, we can control the acoustic force that is exerted on the object. Science fiction now becomes reality. The device is like the technology seen in the sci-fi shows such as Star Trek, like the show's tractor beam technology. The method can also pull objects toward a source. Countless manipulation is a hot area of research in optics and electromagnetism. But this research proposes another method offers advantages that other methods may not have. Also, outside of the applications of this research, enables expanding upon our knowledge of physics, and that's very exciting. The research team plans to refine the method with higher frequencies, allowing it to move different materials and object sizes one day. I think we're charting in a new direction. I think you are, showing that without a physical contact, we can move objects. Amanda, I want you to roll that video because I tell you, this is an exciting story.
That's Chris Benmore, a physicist with Argonne National Laboratory who uses this gravity-defying technology. We spoke to him to find out how acoustic levitation works and what exactly it's used for.
Walk us through what acoustic levitation is and how it works.
Acoustic levitation uses sound waves to generate a force to counteract gravity. It was developed primarily by NASA in the 60s and the 70s to do ground-based experiments on looking at the effects of anti-gravity on Earth.
And can you walk us through the different components of the device that you have there and how the sound waves actually come together to produce the levitation?
These transducers basically drive these horns, the silver part. And so this horn will vibrate at 22,000 times a second up and down to generate a sound wave. And we have a match transducer down here and horn, and that will generate another sound wave. And when these two waves interact, you'll get what's called a standing wave. So they'll cancel in places and they'll reinforce in others to create nodes and antinodes. And those particular places where they cancel, you can put an object in and you can levitate.
All right, well, let's see this in action if you wouldn't mind giving us a demo.
Right now, I've created a standing wave. These horns, which I'm not going to touch, are vibrating at 22,000 times a second, creating a standing wave. And so I can put an object in that little cavity where the two standing waves cancel. In fact, there are several cavities where I can put objects. And so if I just have this brass rod here, you can see I can go through them. If I come in from the side with my hand, you see I get some reflections, I will disturb it more. So I will interfere.
Is there anything particularly special about the sound waves themselves, or is it more the way they're interacting that is really essential for producing the effect?
It is the way they're interacting and the particular frequency. So both of these devices operate at 22 kilohertz, and so that's just on the edge of human hearing. So you might hear it come in and out, okay, especially if I turn it up to the higher power.
I love that.
Isn't it incredible? Cool. Now, I'll tell you why I picked this story is because two things. Because I've always been fascinated how the pyramids have always been built. And I really, truly believe that there was some sort of technology. Nobody lifted those things on their back and rolled them down some hill and up there and then stacked them up like that. It's just, they would still be doing it today if they tried to do that. So there had to be some type of higher technology. And we are on the verge of all this higher technology. Now think about this. If in fact we're publicizing this now, what do they really have? What do they really have that they're not telling us? The stuff that they keep secret. Katie, what do you think?
I love this. I love this stuff. I agree with you, Chris. I think we're rediscovering ancient technology. I think, what is that? It's like the Stonehenge in the United States, and the guy had that secret box, and then he died. And I think he probably discovered this technology
the castle,
again. That's it. And I also think it has to do with ley lines, and maybe even potentially how some of these craft, use our sound that we naturally produce in the earth to, I mean, I don't know. I just know it's important.
Well, we're proving the theory.
It's important.
It's not theory anymore.
Right.
I mean,
we can do it.
We can do it now.
Yeah.
We've taken theories.
I can't do it though.
Science fiction
Keep
to
trying.
science
Practice.
fact. Yeah, go ahead. This I want to see.
For a second.
Okay.
Anyway, Amanda started the video with her mind. I like that.
All right. So, anyways, that's the news for the week.
Yeah.
I like that news. Good news, Chris.
Yeah. Awesome.
All right. I think we don't have Bob this week. Bob is on vacation.
No, Bob is doing a little time with the family, but he will be back next week with some.
I'm glad you said with the family, because I thought you were going to say Bob's doing a little time.
Yeah.
What did he do?
Holiday time.
Well, he'll make parole here soon. So.
All right, so I will go right into case of the week then, which was actually 2 cases of the week. So this is case 127249 and case 127248. They both started out as category 1s. One moved to a category 3, and the other one, I believe, is a category 2. Both occurred on December 8th, 2022, so very recent. Here's where the difference is. One was at 10 p.m. I believe the other one was 6, so a little bit earlier. One was in Cornelia, Georgia, and the other one was in Gainesville, Georgia. So same state. Kind of similar cases. Case 1, the witness says that he saw 2 orb-like stars that came upon him as he looked up, and when he was talking to a higher being. They showed up, and he knows for a fact that they showed up and moved in a fashion that was realistic. So kind of an interesting testimony there from the witness. Case number 2, he said on the evening on December 8th at 6:13 p.m., there's the time, I noticed a dark cloud that appeared to be in a triangle shape. At this point, I took a picture of it and noticed immediately that an object appeared within the cloud. Both cases were closed as unknown UAVs. So Amanda, if you want to roll a video from the first case, and then there's photos from the second case. So we'll just roll the video. What do you think?
Well, I would ask him a couple of questions first. First question I'd ask him is how he was holding the camera. Because the thing is moving at incredible speeds, back, forth, up, down. Left,
I think that's
right,
the movement of the camera.
So I wanted to see if that's the movement of the camera and what kind of camera he has. That would be the first couple of things. But it is an intriguing photo. I mean, it's certainly not acting like a Chinese lantern. It's not acting like a drone. So I would want to look into that, and I'd love to find out if this camera was still, what the speed of that was, because that thing was moving.
What do you think?
It wasn't the camera.
Yeah, I think it was a camera, but because I zoomed it in, so it was a better impact for our viewers. Because when the original video, you could see the treetops and it was zoomed out. And what's interesting is I don't think it's planetary. And I don't think it's Chinese lanterns, because you would see them move through the wind. And they watched it for quite some time, which is also interesting. And I'm not sure how they exited. But you could see the distance with the treetops in the original footage. What do you think, Tara?
Well, it looked like there were two lights.
And there were two
doing the exact same things, like kind of movement and luminosity as well. And it's hard to tell. And I think if they could, do some image stabilizing on that film, it might help a lot. So.
Do we know if that one light, the smaller one off to the right side, is a reflection?
It looks like it is, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the other good point, Chris. The sun is.
Thank you very I have one too.
You're such a good investigator. But the sun, in the original video, you could see the sun setting. So, and I know you could see a green reflection from the camera. So, yeah, more work needs to be done, but still an intriguing case, and also intriguing that there was that second case that came in same day, around the same time, within hours. So, Amanda, if you could show the pictures of the second case. This is the original picture. It's hard to see what we're looking at, so I cropped it. And I'm not actually even sure if it's the light on the top or the two on the bottom. So I'm thinking it's the two on the bottom based on what the report said. So I zoomed it in even more. These two little anomalies right there. That's the photographs from the second case. So pretty interesting.
It almost looks like that was a box or something.
I was thinking a triangle.
Some kind of structure there. It looks like square in the top right edges.
Yeah, it was reported as a triangle. So, yeah, that's case of the week out of Georgia.
Very cool.
That's good. Did we ever figure out that one in the top? Was that a planet, maybe?
Possibly. Maybe. Yeah, I don't know if that was part of the report or not. I don't think so. I think they were talking about the two on the bottom. But anyway, both interesting cases.
Great cases, Katie.
Thanks. All right. I think now would be a good time to bring in our special guest, Richard Beckwith. He has been with MUFON for more than 15 years and presently serves as a state director for Wyoming, and he also serves on the board of directors. He has been a practicing attorney for more than 28 years and possesses a Juris Doctorate from the University of Wyoming College of Law and a Bachelor of Science degree in molecular biology from the University of Wyoming. He wrote for the Land and Water Law Review and published his first novel in 2016. He presently serves as the city attorney for the city of Rock Springs, Wyoming. Please welcome to the show, Richard Beckwith. Hi, Richard.
Hi, how are you tonight?
I'm great. So glad to have you on the show.
I'm happy to be here.
Now, we met in Denver, if my memory serves me right. So
actually, I think we may have met in Newport Beach, and I was playing a little joke on you because I introductions were going around, and I think I shook your hand and said something like, "Hi, my name's Bob Nelson" or something like that. Just you kind of gave me this look like, I don't think that's your name.
That's funny. You think I'd remember that? Anyway, but we really didn't get a chance to talk too much one-on-one there in Denver. And I really, I kind of wanted to start out asking you how you got involved in the topic of ufology in general. I think that's a really good place to start.
Well, like a lot of folks, my interest in ufology started when I was a kid. And I actually had a paranormal experience when I was about 7 years old, and I don't know if that's an appropriate topic necessarily to talk about on this particular program, but I had what I call a paranormal experience when I was a little kid, and so I knew from a really early age that the world was different. There were different aspects to the world that most of us weren't aware of. And so when I got a little bit older, and my dad told me about this flying saucer that crashed in the desert, in the Southwest desert, and they found alien bodies on board. And I was maybe about 11 or 12 years old at the time. And he had also told me that we were from the planet Clytopia, and that he was on a spaceship that crashed in the Great Salt Lake, and that if he glowed at night, and if I saw him glowing, that he would have to kill me. So that's why I had to go to bed on time.
Oh no!
So,
That's an interesting children's story.
So your dad had a sense of humor.
Right.
We know where you got yours from.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started really. I thought to myself, well, this can't be true. So a lot of kids did back then, I went to the library and I read all the books I could find on the subject, and I found out, well, wow, this is really true, and that this thing really did happen, and this phenomenon known as UFOs or whatever is real, and I got a taste for it early on in life.
Well, I actually, I know this is a Move On show, but, inevitably we do talk about the paranormal and the connections. A lot of the listeners and people know that I, had experiences very much like Skinwalker Ranch, on a ranch in Colorado, and all of that paranormal stuff is connected. So if you can elaborate on what your paranormal experiences was, that would be fantastic. If you're comfortable sharing.
Sure. No, I'd be more than happy to. I'm not ashamed of it.
Oh, good. And you shouldn't be.
Right.
That's why we're all here.
So it was, I think right around the death of my grandfather, I was about 7 years old, and he died at a fairly young age. I think he was 54. And so we were living in a house in Cheyenne, and my bedroom that I shared with my sister was in the top of this house. It was in I guess what you would call the attic. It was a smaller house, in an older house in Cheyenne. And my bed was parallel to a hallway. And if I turned around on my bed, I could look down the hallway and see to the other end of the house. And there was a window down there, and there was you could see a little bit of light, maybe sometimes from the moon, all depending on where the moon was at or whatever. And I think there was a street light nearby, but nonetheless, I was laying in my bed, and all of a sudden, just out of a dead sleep, I was awakened by what I can only describe as two hands on my arm. So I was laying on my left side, and this thing, whatever it was, grabbed my arm, and I immediately woke up. This was not a sleep paralysis experience because I could move. I mean, I knew that someone had touched me, and I thought, whoa, my gosh. And I don't know what it was, but it was something about the nature of the touch that told me this was something unusual. And so I remember staring at the wall, saying to myself, just look, it's got to be somebody, I'm trying, and this is a 7-year-old boy trying to rationalize this. And so whatever it was, let go. And then I heard these, I guess, footsteps on the floor next to me, and then they moved slowly down this hallway, and it sounded like someone was walking away. So when this sound got about what I judged to be about halfway down the hallway, I turned around in my bed really quick, and I looked down the hallway to see if I could tell who it was. It was also really very dark, and what I saw was all I could describe as a pillar of mist, which was about the size of a human being, a person. And this pillar of mist was moving along with the footsteps, or, the sound of the floor creaking. Because, as I said, it was an older house. And so the floorboards had a tendency to make a sound as when you were walking on them. Any person that walked on them would tell that. But I saw this thing go to the end of the hallway, and then it got to the end of the hallway, and it turned to my right to go down the stairs. And as it did that, all of a sudden I got a burst of courage and I jumped up out of the bed. I ran down to the end of the hallway, and I was yelling, "Who are you? What are you?" And I got down to the end of the hallway, and I saw this thing down at the bottom of the stairs kind of go off and go into the living room. And as I did that, my grandmother came out of her room, which was right next to the stairway, and said, "What are you doing?" And I had, well, I was just on this thing. It was, 7 years old, and that got poo-pooed for a number of years until at a family reunion some years later, my grandmother also confirmed that she had seen this apparition, who she believed, and I believe may have been my grandfather. So I just want to say something about that particular kind of an experience. I think that we have a tendency to look at this ghost phenomenon as though we're talking maybe or communicating with people who have passed on, and I think that's, I think we may be jumping to conclusions.
I agree with that, Rich.
Yeah, I think it's easy to ascribe that to people who have passed on, but I try to take a more pragmatic approach to that and say to myself, well, until I see more information, I think it may have been my grandfather, possibly, but I'm open to the possibility that it could have been something else entirely, maybe even a different kind of entity. An interdimensional kind of entity, which of course ghosts may be, but if there are such a thing.
Can I just jump in here for a second, guys? Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right, Rich. I've heard some fascinating stories that match yours, and a couple of things there. I just got to ask you, after that encounter that you had, do you think maybe you were abducted?
No, I don't feel that I've ever been abducted. Maybe I have been, but I would be a liar to say that I think I've been abducted or even have an inclination to believe that I may have been abducted. But that particular experience did tell me early on in life, that there is an aspect to life that isn't generally acknowledged, that we all sort of don't talk about it. And UFOs to a certain extent are sort of a part of that. It's a part of life, these paranormal type experiences. Right. Of course, I don't view UFOs or UAPs as paranormal. I mean, they're just simply normal things with various explanations.
The only reason I say that is because I've had abduction cases where a mist is there, that a person has felt, fingers holding them down or pressure on their hands, like somebody is holding them, exactly how you explained. The only thing that I don't ever recall are the footsteps, but the mist is one of those classic things that we see sometimes in abductions. Yes. That move. And we also know that as a child, sometimes entities come in and they put a screen memory of something that you may not be as frightful of. Perhaps, and this is a theory that some people actually have that I've talked to in MUFON, that sometimes what you perceive as a ghost may actually just be a screen memory of an alien, so you don't see their actual faces. Because remember, aliens come in as owls, deers, rabbits. And as a child, they sometimes say, well, a pirate came into my room, or, this cartoon character came in my room. And, it could be very much a screen memory that came in. What do you think about that, Rich?
Well, I'm certainly open to that possibility. I don't discount that possibility. I think that because if I had an explanation, I would say, well, this is what it is. And I was simply inclined to believe that it may be my grandfather. He had recently passed. I didn't get to see him in the hospital, and he passed. He and I were very close. So he was like my best friend up until I was, my parents had gotten divorced when I was younger, and right around that time. And so he and I were very close, and he really kind of took me under his wing and was very much and then he died at 54 when I was 7. So it was very devastating to me. And so it was within a close proximity to that particular event, which made me believe that perhaps that had something to do with it. But I may be completely incorrect about that. As I said, I think that we sort of make these assumptions, and all I can say is what I saw, what I experienced, and beyond that, I have no explanation for it.
It's just fascinating. Richard, I read your Matter from Thought paper about consciousness, and I am so inspired by that. And it has just given me so much to think about. And thinking about the mist, and it could be your grandfather, there's so many possibilities. But, one of the last things about that paper that you talked about was the most important thing of true value is love. And I'm wondering, it talks about consciousness. When does it end? Does it end? And could that have been a consciousness? Did you feel any love? And can you just talk about that and maybe emotions involved with consciousness as well?
Mm-hmm. Well, I can't say that I felt love from this entity. I don't know. I was only fearful. And I can say that the actions that it took you could interpret them as loving, because this entity had its hands on me. It actually came and touched me, and it didn't, attempt to, tear my head off or pull my arms off. It just very gently touched me for a little while and then walked away. And so, it certainly had a love, but I didn't feel any emotions at that time other than just, honestly, it was probably one of the most frightening and fearful experiences of my life. It scared me to death. I still get scared. I still feel that original fear that I felt when I did that. But as to the things I discussed in that paper, when I say that, love is the currency of consciousness, I think is how I refer to it. And in other words, in this particular incarnation, currency, we think of currency as, you buy things with money. You have a credit card and you pay that off with money that you put in the bank, which you purportedly earn at a job. And you have, what currency is. Well, there isn't any of that in a perpetual state. There is no physicality. And so the only thing that exists, the only way that you have to transact with others or to engage in transactions with others is through the transmission and receipt of emotion. And I say love because it is my opinion, based upon these things that I've looked into over the period of my life, that love is in fact what is at the center of everything. That love, and I guess you could look at it like God, but I guess I don't view it in that same sort of a way. But love is in fact the currency of consciousness. Emotion is the currency of consciousness. It's the only way that eternal entities, conscious entities, have the ability to, interact with each other, and that of course presumes that's the case, that we don't all just simply snuff out when our bodies end, and we're not just the product of chemistry and biology.
So the Beatles had it right. All we need is love.
Oh, I think so.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think consciousness is at the center of everything. I think Max Planck said that.
Yeah. Let me ask you this then: if love is a way to connect with consciousness and perhaps other beings from other worlds, other places, do you believe that? Because obviously there are those that maybe don't have our best interests at heart or aren't so loving, that are fearful. Do you think that scenario of love versus evil or good versus bad is that part of what's going on here?
I think that is a concept. It's a social construct. Good versus evil. What you and I view as good and evil may not be necessarily good or evil in the context of another culture.
True.
And so, when you say good or evil, I struggle to understand precisely
I guess I
what
mean
that
hate.
means.
I guess I mean hate
Yeah.
or malicious intent is what I mean by evil. Like you can be loving and caring and give out positivity, but you can also spew out hate towards people and just anger.
Yeah.
That's what I mean by that, I guess. I guess that's what
Yeah, I think that it is important to treat others with complete and utter respect, to try to exude love as much as possible, because it is actually it's actually a part of consciousness. There's a I'm gonna get off into another area here, but
That's okay.
We're good.
We're all good.
Yeah, go for it.
We all need to
okay,
hear
well,
this.
I haven't heard a lot of discussion in MUFON about. There's a couple of there's some cases that took place in Italy in the 50s, 60s, called the friendship cases. Have you guys heard about those?
No.
Okay, you need to look into this. Okay, there's an author out there. His name is Stefano Breccia, and he wrote a couple of books, Mass Contact, and another. Anyway, they are basically chronicles of a series of contactee cases that took place in the 50s and some mass contact cases that took place in Europe, and in particular in and near Pescara, Italy in the 50s and 60s. And basically it was I guess you would call them a human race of aliens that were, for all intents and purposes, identical to us, except for they ranged in height. Some of them were very tall, some of them were very short, and they were possessed of these really incredible technologies, and they had an entity that they called Reda, and Reda was essentially, it was a real entity that was fed by love. They actually, and there was actually some of their technologies, even according to Stefano Breccia and the other people that were involved in the friendship cases, said that their technology, some of their technologies were actually controlled by love. Some of their defensive weapons were controlled by their the energy that they derived from feeding this entity called Reda. But there was also an opposite entity that was fed by bad feelings and mistrust, and that they refer to that entity. And it's really strange that they would assign real entities to these things, but they called that entity Ureda. And so, again, I'm not saying that these things are true. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
but
Interesting.
It's awesome, Richard.
Yeah.
But I think that, but the implication is, and when you read these books, that entities from other places, not necessarily other planets, but maybe other dimensions, if you will, other universes, are possessed of incredible technologies that far surpass even our understanding. Like, for example, they just in talking about these particular entities, they could build a base on the Earth simply by activating a mechanism, and this mechanism would simply open up a space in whatever location they wanted it to, and it would end up compressing the walls, which were essentially made of rock and so forth, and soil around it, and make it into a really super strong material. And their bases could be as big as they wanted, and without one small piece of machinery. They don't need to take tractors and all these things. They can just simply say, okay, I want to put the base here. How big do we want it? And they I guess, using a computer, or for lack of a better understanding, they're able to prescribe the dimensions of the base, the location that they want, or the space, I guess, if you will, and then they can simply teleport whatever they want into these bases. They can be underground. Some of them were hundreds of meters tall, and some of them even, according to the author, he's actually a very well-known and respected engineer in Italy, said that there were sometimes even weather inside of these bases, but they were essentially occupied by these humans that they called the Friends. And they were there battling with the contraries, which I think may be the Greys. They called, which were what we sort of look. I guess you could analogize them to the Ferengi in Star Trek. Meant only for their whole thing is, material gain and the acquisition of material wealth and knowledge. So that's a very interesting way to look at things, but that's one of the cases, I think, or at least one of the string of cases that I think should be paid more interest to, because I think that Lou Elizondo is aware of this, and I think that there are a lot of people, especially those that have been briefed by the Italians and those that were involved in the study of the friendship cases, are aware of this, that they're actually, like when you see UFOs purportedly go, they'll go in and out of a mountain. Now, I don't know if you've seen UFOs like that, or in and out of a volcano.
Yes.
Well, the explanation for that is that their technology allows them to simply, when they go in and out of these locations, to simply open up a space. Their bases have no entrances. They don't have any entrances with a door with a little secret button that says, or a little rock that you push and you go in. They open up an entrance or an exit when they need it, using the same technology that they use to construct the base, only on a smaller scale, so they can exit and enter places just simply using this technology. And when they want to abandon a base or not use an entrance or an exit anymore, even if it's just spontaneously, they just flip a little switch, if you will, and the entrance way goes away, the base goes away, the walls close in, and they return to their natural state without a lot of rumbling and so forth, as we would imagine,
right,
using the technologies that we would use.
Maybe it's the love frequency. Maybe it's the love vibration, just like Chris's new story. Maybe that's what they're using. I'm being serious, because that's the highest form of vibration and frequency. Maybe that's what they're doing.
It's possible. I don't know, but that's one of the things that I think, again, that I think Lou and some of those folks may be aware of the presence of these beings, and at least if they were briefed, and I believe they were, by the Italians, who have a long history of studying these particular line of cases.
Richard, I am absolutely fascinated with this, and I'm going to be delving into this as soon as this program's over with.
Oh yeah, well there's a couple of, look at that book from Stefano Breccia in particular. It's called Mass Contact, and it's BRECCIA.
The thing that I'm curious about is why these entities would want to pick such a primitive place. I mean, because in the world today, there isn't a whole lot of love going around. We got wars going on, we got mass shootings, we got all kinds of things. And I'm just wondering, it'd be fabulous, but if I was one of those entities, I go, hey, Harry, how we pick this place? These guys are crazy. You know what I mean? I mean, think of how we are as a being. We have a conscience. We have this ability to know what's right and wrong, but yet we choose, like you say, this hate and this warlike attitude instead of going in a direction that we know is a better direction. That love direction is much better, but we never take it. We don't take it.
Well, I think that you need to look at human history and see how far we have in fact come throughout the course of we're killing fewer people now than we ever have in human history. Even though we have these weapons of mass destruction and so forth, generally speaking, the quality of life for the average human being on the planet has increased tremendously. I think that we're headed for a very bright future. And I understand your skepticism, but at the same time, I think that we have to start looking at things in terms of millennia, hundreds of millennia, and evolutionarily. And so I think that evolutionarily speaking, and certainly culturally speaking, human beings are in fact getting a little bit better. We are getting better. We're learning to communicate with one another. We're learning how to respect one another. and I realized, and I got, now you guys are going to get me off on something else here. but the cultural differences that we see right now, not only in our own country, but globally, are really reflections of every individual's ego. There's always that part of every one of us that has a fear of the other. Every human being on this planet fears the other.
Exactly.
But not every human being on the planet succumbs to that fear. The other part of that is every human being on the planet is basically good. We do love our fellow human beings, and that part of us also is reflected in the culture, because those individuals don't succumb to the fear, and they would rather trust. And so what I would say is that if we ever hope to survive as a species, we must learn how to trust. We have to learn how to trust the other rather than to fear the other, rather than to succumb to that fear. And what better scenario to do it in than within the context of meeting or conversing with, interacting possibly with someone who came from another place, who maybe has gone through all of this before themselves. But I think that until we can, and this is, I guess I'm getting into kind of a Baha'i faith kind of thing. I'm not a member of the Baha'i faith, but I do think that this really does hold true. And that is until every human being on the planet can look at every other person on the planet as though they are a member of their immediate family and love those people that you don't even know, truly love even your enemies more than you love yourself, then we're doomed.
Yeah, that's true. We are coming up on a break, and that's one of my little tips when you get flustered in traffic. I always just say to myself, what if that was my son or daughter learning how to drive? And I would want people to be like a little, give them some space, give them some patience. Like, okay, they're just learning how to drive. So I try to practice that in traffic when I find myself getting, we need to slow down and love each other. But it is time for a break. When we come back, more with Richard Beckwith. We'll see you on the other side.
Hey members, the new KGRA DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA DB.
MUFON is the voice of thousands of like-minded people who want to see change. We speak up against UFO secrecy. We engage governments and agencies around the world on the topic. We share information with the public through our journal, website, newsletter, social media, and even our own TV channel. When you join MUFON, you add your voice to the cause. Few things are more important in our time than understanding the UFO question. Join MUFON. Find your friends.
Hi, I'm Austin Butler from Baz Luhrmann's new film, Elvis.
Tomorrow, all of America will be talking about Elvis Presley.
As a blood donor himself, Elvis shared the gift of life with patients in need and asked others to do the same. We're encouraging you to give blood this summer. Please visit redcrossblood.org/Elvis movie today to learn more.
You're listening to the KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. We provide unparalleled coverage of trending news in the world of ufology, cryptozoology, and paranormal phenomenon. Whether you're watching our video live stream or listening to one of our audio programs, you are getting the best from world-renowned researchers and hosts, guiding you through topics the mainstream won't touch. Miss one of your favorite programs? No problem. Head over to the members area at kgradb.com for access to our massive library of award-winning content. Make contact, stay connected, only at kgradb.com.
All right. Welcome back. All right. So along these lines of what we were talking about before the break, a lot of people speculate that perhaps, because a lot of people ask me, well, if ETs exist and aliens are real, why don't they just come out and say hello and land on the White House lawn? And perhaps maybe they're waiting for us to evolve to exactly what Richard was talking about. Do you think that could be a possibility?
Are you asking me?
I am asking you.
Good. Phew.
Our special guest.
Not asking me, Richard. I can tell you that.
Well, I think that there are a number of things going on here. And I think that it's difficult to ascribe, in my opinion, after doing this for a really long time, to ascribe the phenomenon simply to beings coming here from another planet. I think it's much more, I'm starting to think like Jacques Vallée. Mm-hmm. I think that it's much more complex, elegant, and deep, perhaps, than that. Oh. I think that, if you listen to Lou Elizondo and some of the things that he said recently, and I want to say that I have a tremendous amount of respect for Lou. I think that he, in my book, he's a hero. He gave up everything to let all of us know that there's something to this phenomenon. But nonetheless, I think that there's more than one explanation for it, and it may, and I don't want to say it may be, or just say that it may be interdimensional. It may, the universe that we live in may be a matrix, like they're saying, but it may be, we think of, God and heaven and we think in terms of that, mostly because that's the way we've sort of been brought up, with our sort of religious convictions. We have an idea about how the world works, and then we get into UFOs. And when I got into this, my idea was, well, yeah, there are these little guys coming in these little spaceships, and they come and they land and they go out there and they take soil samples, and every once in a while they take one of us and they stick needles on us, and they have motherships and all that stuff. And I think that's a really simplistic way to look at it. I think that, and that's not to say that, Katie, you're looking at it in a simplistic way. I'm just saying that there is so much more to the phenomenon, and it goes to the nature of consciousness. And if you listen to Lou Elizondo, he's been very sobering in some of the things that he's said. And I think one of the things that he said actually was that if you learn the truth about this subject, that it's going to be very sobering for people. And I think one of the reasons is because Lou and some of these other folks know a lot more than what they're telling us, what they're saying publicly about the phenomenon. And I think, and I had a discussion with Chris about this the other day, I think that the really sobering part to all of this is that we're going to learn that somewhere along the line, we have been, in fact, perhaps genetically manipulated, that we're maybe not an experiment, so to speak. Maybe it's something much greater than that, something that we don't necessarily understand or comprehend, but our genes have been manipulated, and these beings may have something to do with that. That's got to be a very scary thought for all of us, to think, sure. because this certainly flies in the face of the notion that we're all children of God, and we're gonna, one day we'll be raptured when Christ returns, or what, and in my opinion, and I don't want to offend anyone, that's all just dogma. It's not the way things really are. And our existence as human beings on this planet is so much more complex than simply having. I mean, certainly, I think we evolved from lower forms of life, but I think there's a real possibility, and I think even Watson and Crick, the folks that, or at least Dr. Watson believed that we may have been manipulated, that DNA maybe, was manipulated over a period of time. There are various periods in our history where we sort of jump ahead.
Could we start it from a petri dish, Rich?
Well, maybe some alien petri dish somewhere, but my degree's in molecular biology, and I got into the field when it was relatively young, back in the mid 80s. And so back then the idea was that DNA itself evolved on Earth, that somehow, and I think they called it the primordial soup theory, where, a bunch of amino acids were, boiling in a primordial sea with all the volcanic activity, and the comets are hitting and all that stuff. And then somehow just spontaneously life arises out of that. And this DNA comes out of it. But I think that we've found now that all of the basic stuff of life exists out in the universe. It exists out there. And so what we're talking about, amino acids that come in on comets, even short amino acid sequences, which, as we know, are the building blocks of proteins, and also basic DNA is being found on some of these comets. So I've subscribed now more to the notion of panspermia, but I also think that all these things are related somehow. That there is no time. The past, the present, and the future all exist in the same place. There is really no past or present or future when you're looking at things from a multi-dimensional perspective. I hate to get off in this weird esoteric sort of area here, but
go for it, man.
Well, I feel compelled to say, well, I'm not just talking out of my rear end here.
Well, I never thought that, so I can tell you.
Because I'm making a lot of claims.
It is. It's very interesting.
Well, I'm making a lot of claims here, but one of the things that the people that I've worked with, for example, I've got this mentor. His name is Dr. Stanislav Ojak, and he's a friend of mine that I got to know many years ago, and I didn't realize when I first got to know Dr. Ojak that he was at there's Dr. Ojak is right to my left there. He's the older gentleman with the camera there, and he is a clinical psychologist. And over on the far right is Claude Swanson, who also is a dear friend of mine who just passed away recently. And next to me is Richard Dolan, who I believe had met either that day or within a couple of days of that. And he wouldn't know me from Adam, but I was just really happy to be in that picture because the two really close friends I have are Dr. Ojak and Dr. Swanson. Well, the reason that we're in this picture is that that day, Richard was talking about the experiments that were taking place at SRI that Hal Puthoff and Russell Targ were doing there, and he was doing those experiments with a rather famous remote viewer named Ingo Swann. Well, as it turns out, my friend Stanislav there was at SRI with Hal Puthoff and Russell Targ. I know that I can, because I confirmed it with actually with Hal Puthoff himself. They were very close friends, but Stanislav was a very close friend of Ingo Swann. And this is where the CIA's remote viewing program came from, was from these experiments that they were doing at SRI. And so Stanislav essentially became, and is still around today, he's a few years older than that. I think that was back in 2016 or 17. It was in Las Vegas. But Stanislav had spent many years at SRI and doing some, and I can't tell you too much about what he did. He didn't really share too much, or he didn't share any classified information with me, but I know that one of the things that Stanislav did that he confirmed to me was and I believe this was for the CIA. And please don't kill me over this. If anybody's listening,
please don't kill us for listening.
I can't guarantee what those guys are going to do.
But part of what he did was to seek out, identify, and cultivate psychically gifted children. He was very good with children, and I know that there were some folks that came out of that program that were able to do some pretty fantastic things. One of them I know myself, and I was able to witness some things, them do some things that I guess along the lines of what you would call telekinesis. But nonetheless, this was my mentor, or has been my mentor now for many years, and I got to know Dr. Swanson, and Claude was on. He's been on Coast to Coast and a bunch of other things, but he wrote several books. He has a website called The Synchronized Universe, synchronizeduniverse.com, and he wrote The Synchronized Universe, Life Force, The Scientific Basis, and The Science of the Soul, The Afterlife, and The Shift. And he was an experimental physicist at MIT, and he started doing these experiments and traveling all over the world as well, and getting some idea about consciousness and about how it affected the actual physical world. And so he went to the Far East and started studying the Qi and so forth, which is I guess you could call it the Chinese version of the Force, and the Force is real, by the way. I mean, it's something that some of these Qigong masters have been able to do fantastic things with this power that they refer to as the Qi, which is essentially just that. It's like the Force. With the Force, I guess, or with the Qi, you can manipulate matter and so forth, but all has to do with the interaction of consciousness and matter. And these Qi masters have somehow found the ability to, and if you train long enough, purportedly, you can learn how to do some of the many weird things that these guys do, like, levitate and affect people across the room, knock them down without actually touching them, and things like that. But Dr. Swanson studied those things a lot, and so Dr. Swanson and I spent quite a bit of time together, and Stanislav and I have spent quite a bit of time together. And another a mutual friend of ours was Dr. Sprinkle.
Mm-hmm.
And so Dr. Sprinkle, as you may or may not know, Kate, you knew Leo.
Yep.
He was into this whole consciousness thing, and we actually, that picture that you're showing right now was taken. Stanislav and Leo were actually very close too. I don't know if Leo spoke much about him as he was nearing the end of his life, but he and Stanislav were very close. But this is at our first meeting of a organization, a short-lived organization called the Institute for Human Cosmic Interaction. Mm-hmm. And so we had this meeting in Laramie, an organizational meeting, I guess, and I kind of had a weird experience there. I guess you could call it, Barbara Lamb was there. And I guess they called it the Kundalini. I don't know what happened to me, but I did kind of have a weird experience there. But we formed this little organization. It was just like an invitation-only little group called the Institute for Human Cosmic Interaction. And there's our little group there. You can see actually Stan Romanek is back there. Stan and I are still close friends. I know he's had his issues, but I have my own thoughts about that as well. But anyway, that's the little group that we met in Laramie. And we also met a few other times. We met in Phoenix, and we also met in Reno. I think there's a picture of us all in Reno, and there when we're in Reno. There's a bunch of us there, like standing next to me in the back there is Paul Rivera. He was actually Ingo Swann's protege. And then there's Ray Hernandez there, and Carol Druhl, and there's Barbara Lamb. And then there's, let's see, in the middle there is Dr. Simeon Hine. And on the far right, well, and you can see there's a few of the folks in there too that Barbara brought her, some of her folks that were in her hybrid book. And I had met those folks in Phoenix. over on the far right is an engineer that I got to know. We got to be good friends. His name is Randy Kirkendall, and he was a control systems engineer that I got to know when I was working for Dr. Greer. He was one of the engineers on the Orion project that I worked on, and he was one of the control systems engineers. We had some electrical engineers and some other folks on that particular team, but as I started hanging out with these folks and starting reading more material, it became pretty apparent that consciousness really plays an intimate role in all of these things. We essentially create reality with consciousness, and this reality that we all live in right now, where it's a shared reality. And so I think one of the books, or one of the things that we talked about early on, was that article I wrote. And there are two, there's a guy in there that has come up with a theory called biocentrism, who his name is Dr. Adam Lanza. And it's sort of an extension, I guess, of this notion that consciousness creates the universe. But it's essentially what Dr. Lanza posits is that that the universe could not exist without biology, that biology is necessary because biology produces the conscious entities necessary to experience the universe. And I've reached the conclusion that that's what the purpose of life is. We're not here, this isn't some kind of test, that we're not here, it may be perhaps a school, but I don't really subscribe to that notion either. Think about it this way. We're not separate from the universe, but we're not, we have a tendency to look at ourselves as though we're looking at the universe from the outside. We're observers of the universe. We're outside of it looking in, but nothing could be further from the truth. We are a part of the universe. We are the way in which the universe experiences itself. Conscious living entities like us all over the universe, all over all over the multiverse. We are the way in which the multiverse, the universe, experiences itself. And so that essential part of us that animates this body that surrounds this force, whatever it is, this body is just temporary, but that consciousness rejoins that pool. And these experiences that we have, they're all shared. We have, we go and, you have this, the near-death experience. Dr. Swanson, Claude was really interested in the near-death experiences, and they really are the way, they really are interesting to look at, because they seem to provide a lot of information about what could possibly take place afterwards. And in these near-death experiences, you sort of end up having this life review, but you end up being able to go back and to any place in time, go forward to any place in time, and you end up sharing your experiences with others. You get to, not only do you in your life review get to feel and experience everything that you did during your life, but you also get to experience and feel everything that others felt as the result of the things that you did. That's sort of how we create our own hells.
Richard, let me get this. This is fascinating. I'll tell you. I had to stop you because I got this question I'm dying to ask you. So our body is nothing more than a vessel for a consciousness that never fades.
Right.
It doesn't die. It just moves to a greater plane. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, I think you could think of it as nothing more than a suit. It's a facade that we put on it. Really, all the world is a stage, and we are merely players. And so this persona that you assume in this particular place and time is merely temporary. We have a tendency to think of things in terms of, oh my God, my life is only, 60, 70, 80 years. And then what happens afterwards? A lot of people think we just keel over and your body croaks and that's it. And there is nothing more. The worms eat you and they crawl in and out and they play pinochle on your snout.
And they spit it out.
Once they get to me, they're going to have a feast. I can tell you that.
But I don't subscribe to that anymore, because even if you you cannot find the seat of consciousness. There is not a neurosurgeon on this planet or a physicist or an astrophysicist. There's not a scientist of any discipline on this planet that can explain consciousness. And there are some really good theories out there. I subscribe to the notion that consciousness is perhaps a field. And think of it this way. When you make a hologram, like a true hologram with a laser, and you embed a 3-dimensional image inside of that hologram, and it's a solid piece of glass or maybe a flat piece of plastic with this hologram in it. If it's a true hologram, what you can do is you can take that solid piece of glass and smash it into 100 billion pieces, and then you can take a little pair of tweezers and look with a little pair of jeweler's glasses and look into that little piece, and the entire image is contained within the shard. Every shard.
Wow.
And so
cool.
That is the nature of reality. We do sort of live in this. I would encourage if you can get these books, they're out of print right now. That there's a couple of books out there that kind of sent me off in this direction too. There's a book. The author's name is Michael Talbot, and he wrote 2 books. He's since passed on, and I think the books are out of print now. But he wrote one called Beyond the Quantum, and he wrote another book called The Holographic Universe. Yeah. And what he did, I thought they were brilliant books, but what he did was he went and he took all these various experiments in physics that had been conducted over many years, and he had this theory, which was helped along by a number of scientists who had this same idea, that the universe is actually holographic in nature. And so you can sort of think of consciousness in that way, that we are the little shards of that greater consciousness, that we are just the little broken pieces of that greater piece of glass that contains the entire image. And the purpose to life is merely to experience it, to not, and there is no judgment, and I know that sounds bad because you think about guys like Hitler, but remember that during your life review, you have to go through everything you put people through when you were alive. So to that extent, we create our own hells. So, in that sense, we create our own sort of dark place.
Yeah, I've heard that in near-death experiencers. But Richard, do you think that if reality is our own construct, would that explain why you can be in a group of people and certain people will experience a UFO and others will not? Are we creating that reality? What do you think about that?
Well, possibly. It could be simply a shared consciousness. Maybe only certain people in the group are meant to see those things. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I've never had that experience. I've never seen a UFO.
Interesting.
But like Stanton Friedman, I know that later in his life he did see one, and I was really happy for him. But I haven't ever seen one. But I am of the same opinion. I don't need to actually see one to know that the phenomenon is real.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I could tell you this: if they do come down and want to talk to people, I hope it's one of you rather than some of the other people. Holy crap! So I want to get back to Lou Elizondo for a second.
Yeah.
Disclosure, because everybody I get 100 questions a week. When are we going to get disclosure, Chris? When are they going to tell us the truth? What are they going to do? What is your opinion? Lou Elizondo, I think, has been giving us little bits. He has said to us, we can't give you the whole story at once because you will not be able to digest it. We got to give it to you in little bits in order to do that. And I think that was pretty smart, because I think what you're saying is this whole type of scenario, and we put it out there, people are going to panic in some respects. I hope they don't, and I truly wish that they wouldn't, but there will always be people that will panic with this and stuff. What is your opinion of disclosure? How do you think it will come?
Well, I think that it's coming right now. I sort of subscribe to Richard Dolan version of disclosure, which is disclosure with a little d rather than disclosure with a big D. I think that eventually it will simply be a cultural understanding. And I think that that's what it's becoming, at least partially a cultural understanding that we have objects operating in our atmosphere that exceed known flight technology envelopes. We know that. The next thing, though, the really tough part for people to swallow is going to be what comes next. And I think I mentioned a little bit earlier what I think may come next. And I think it's already floating around out there, but I believe that they have said that, for example, the videos and the pictures that were taken, there were actually some recent efforts to get additional videos and pictures of those incidents released, because there were, and we were told this, the board was briefed on this back in 2017. We were told that there were high resolution photographs very near to the aircraft, and that there were things on board. That, I think that's already maybe not common knowledge, but I think that's been mentioned, that there, and that's one of the reasons I think that the Pentagon does not want to release the videos. They were actually able to keep those images secret, and I think that there's a reason for it.
What is your reason? What do you think?
Well, I do think that people will have a hard time swallowing it. I mean, folks like us who study the phenomenon and have an idea about what we're up against, maybe we don't even know the whole truth, and I don't think that we do. But even people like us may have a difficult time. What about people that have never paid this issue one thought, which is most of humanity?
Yeah,
most of the planet, and so and so here's what I think, that you cannot just simply wake up one day and tell the whole human race that we are being visited by entities from another world. And the reason that you can't do that is because if all of a sudden everyone on the whole planet simultaneously became aware of that, it would cause a complete restructuring of the ego of every person on the planet. And you have no way to predict the outcome of that. In other words, up until that day, we were the only species. And then when you tell them, no, you're not, there's 400 of them out there, and there's 9 of them coming this way, people will not handle it very well. And I see why they don't want to tell us, because I think that and imagine that coupled with the notion that maybe we are a product.
That's chilling. That last line is chilling, Richard. May be true. And I have to agree with your theory about people not accepting it all at once like that. I think that's fascinating. And
you can't just tell everybody, Chris. You cannot just tell everybody.
I agree.
And because most people, I mean, we might be able to handle it. Some of the truth, we may, after learning all of the truth, if we ever do, we may not be able to handle it. But just your average human being, it's going to take some time. You're talking a complete shutdown of society, at least for some period of time. I mean, after learning all this, are you going to want to go and scoop poop at the horse corral? I don't know. You might want to stay in bed for a few days and drink vodka and hope the whole world doesn't blow up. I don't know. I personally would like to keep going to work, but I think that we sort of assume too much, and I think that we have to be really careful.
So, Richard, sorry.
I just want to say this one thing, Richard. I absolutely agree with you, because when I was a police officer, when people got like a sighting report or something about aliens or things of that nature, some people would actually go out with a rifle and shotgun and threaten their neighbors and stuff, thinking that they were aliens. I mean, some of this stuff, and I still have some cops telling me that we get calls, on some of this stuff where, they think the neighbor down the street is a reptilian or an alien or some, stuff like that all over.
That's kind of.
Go ahead, Katie.
It's funny now until you get a shotgun pointed at you.
It kind of leads into my other question. He can answer both at the same time. Because if you believe that the ETs and there might be a hybrid program, do you believe that different species of ETs manipulated different people's DNA? Could Chris be have part reptilian and Tara have part? I'm just wondering if that's a theory.
Well,
because Chris would be the reptilian.
I hate the water, so I don't think I'm reptilian. I'm certainly not a Nordic.
We need to give this some thought.
I'm a short little guy, so I could be the fattest gray in the universe. Who knows?
Oh no, but seriously, do you think that's true?
Well, this is what I think. I think that our planet is the subject of interest of a number of different civilizations, a number of different entities operating on different levels of technology and consciousness. In other words, we are not just merely, we're not talking about a couple of different visitors from a couple of different places. And so some of them may have manipulated our genes. Some of them may be interested in our planet for completely different reasons. They all have different agendas. Yeah. I don't think that we can assume that we're just dealing with one or two kinds of folks. I think that we have to keep our minds open to the possibility. I mean, I'm not saying that I have any proof of this. I mean, I don't have any. I don't have any more proof of this. I do have some reason to believe that at least, some of these civilizations on some level are communicating with us. And I mean, and I don't mean by,
I need to think bigger. That's all.
Right. I mean, I'm talking about actual technological exchange. And I think that is taking place. It's my belief that is happening. At what level it's taking place, I don't know. What is being said, I don't know. But I do have some reason to believe. And so what that tells me is that at least to some of these civilizations, we're not just, monkeys. Like there's this analogy, I think, that Richard Dolan uses on occasion where he says, you go to the Congo and there's a tribe of gorillas out in the middle of the forest. You don't go to the head gorilla as a human being and say, hey, we would like to establish diplomatic relations with your tribe, because the difference between us clearly is so vast. And so, having some idea that maybe we're communicating with some of these folks, and again, I don't know who they are, any of that sort of thing, tells me that maybe we're not necessarily just cattle to all of them. But I think we also have to open our minds to the possibility that we are, and this is not just a possibility, but the likelihood that we're not the biggest kids on the block. We never were, and our planet has value beyond the fact that we're living on it.
Right.
Oh, that's beautiful. It makes me think about the shared consciousness again, because perhaps the shared consciousness, it's not just us here on Earth, it's with the universe. And that's what I find fascinating. And I'm wondering if you can talk about how you give advice beginning each day as a true skeptic and trying to filter out truths and non-truths about all of this. And just wondering if you can touch base on that.
Yeah, so you must have read the other little thing I wrote about the truth and where to find it.
Yes,
and I think in this day and age, it's more important than ever. A lot of us really subscribe to a lot of conspiracy theories, and the UFO field especially is rife with that kind of stuff. And although I have my sort of beliefs, those about what the phenomenon represents and so forth. Those are really just subjective. A lot of what we think about the world as human beings is really just a matter of our subjective opinion. We really have a tendency as human beings to exclude information that differs or does not comport with the information that we are used to, and so we have a tendency sometimes to just simply ignore the truth because it's not what we believe. We have a really difficult time giving up these sort of entrenched beliefs that we have, and so one of the pieces of advice I give is to learn to let go of that. Learn to say, "Oh, I was wrong about that." Learn to realize that you as a human being have this tendency to exclude information that you disagree with if you have this opinion about something, and only listen to information. It's called confirmation bias. It's very well known in research. This happens a lot with police officers. I'm also a prosecutor, and so this happens quite often with police officers and with a lot of witnesses. They sort of get this, it's a confirmation bias, or investigators. We have an idea about what it could be from the beginning, and so as we go through our investigation, we have a tendency to exclude that information that doesn't comport with our original idea of whatever it is we are investigating might be. And so when you're looking for the truth, there's this thing that intelligence agencies use. They call it mosaic theory. And in mosaic theory, the way that works is you just sort of withhold judgment until you get all of the pixels that you need from the picture that you're trying to create. So you may have a little piece of information here or a little piece of information here, but all those little pieces of information fit together in what the intelligence community refers to as a mosaic. And so that's why a lot of times, when you seek to get information from the intelligence community, they use national security interests as a reason to deny you the information. And although that little piece of information that you're seeking may on the surface appear to be innocuous and inconsequential in the context of the mosaic theory, it may be that last little pixel that a foreign enemy may require in order to put all the final pieces together. And you have to think of that as sort of a little pixels on a TV screen, and that's how the intelligence community looks at it. But we, as individuals, can also use that technique. And so if you see something on a website somewhere that says, well, X, and this happened, and I'm not going to pick out any particular examples or make any sort of political statements or judgments, but if you see a website that says X, okay, well, quite often, if we're not all that bright, we might look at that and go, wow, X. But if you really want to use critical thinking, then you look at that and you say, well, is there anyone else saying X? What are the other sources of information that are saying X? Is it only coming from X? Or is it only coming from this source? And are they only saying X? Or are there other sources of information out there? And are they also saying that X is true? And then so you withhold judgment until you look at all the different places, and you don't just simply rely upon one source, regardless of whether you've learned to trust that source in the past or not. They may give you false information without intentionally doing so, but it's important to keep an open mind and realize that all of the beliefs that you hold, every belief really that you hold, is subject to change and should be subject to change based upon your being presented with new information. You have to overcome that tendency that you have as a human being to simply ignore the information that doesn't comport with your version of reality.
Good advice.
Great.
Oh yeah, Richard, we got to have you back on the show. There's so much to go over. The Atacama humanoid.
Yeah.
Well, I've never heard of that. Can you tell me all about that?
Well, I was actually working for Dr. Gur's Orion project at the time the Atacama humanoid came into his possession, and we had a lot of ideas at that time about what it might be, and it was not too long after that my involvement with the Orion project sort of ceased. I actually drafted the incorporation documents for the Sirius organization, for Dr. Greer's Sirius Corporation. I think they were filed in Virginia. I couldn't file them because I don't practice there, but it came along around that time. I want to say around 2011 or 2012. I was just looking at my emails today and looking at the process of how that took place and the conclusions that they reached. Like you'll remember that Gary Nolan at Stanford University did some genetic work on the Atacama humanoid, and the talk all along was that this was it was either an alien or some kind of an alien hybrid. And I think if you look it up on Snopes, Snopes will say that the conclusion was reached that the Atacama humanoid, and I guess I need to go back to help explain it to you, Chris. The Atacama humanoid is a small humanoid creature of about 6 inches tall that was found in the Atacama Desert. Now, the manner in which the Atacama humanoid came into Dr. Greer's possession is somewhat of a convoluted story, but I can tell you that there are other specimens aside from this Atacama humanoid. But it's a 6-inch thing that was some people were saying was a fetus, but there was some work done on the skeleton, and there was a specialist that did some work on the skeleton, and he determined that this little 6-inch creature was actually about 6 years old and was actually walking around. It died from a blow to the side of its head, and this creature, for all intents and purposes, appears to be completely alien. It has sort of a large skull compared to the rest of the body, an elongated skull, sort of a weird it has 10 ribs, which is unusual for a human. Now they did the DNA work on the mitochondrial DNA, and that's different than the genomic DNA that you get in your cells. So there was actually enough tissue on this creature to determine that it was in fact a real living thing. It wasn't something that somebody constructed in a lab somewhere, or that somebody made as a model or something like that. It was really made of flesh and blood. It had a genetic history. It was actually, according to the genes that were according to the genetic makeup, it was actually a female with genes that came from that region. But the thing that I'm still struggling with, and I don't want to say that this thing was a hybrid, because that a hybrid is, if you look at the definition of hybrid, it's the combination of two different living things, and it makes like a third thing, like a horse and a mule, and they make a donkey kind of a thing. And I think that we may be looking at this thing the wrong way. Is this a hybrid? Well, they say it's human, but here's the thing. They only looked at the mitochondrial DNA, and the mitochondrial DNA is inherited exclusively from the mother. We all have these things in our cells called mitochondria, and they're essentially the energy production engines of the cell, and they produce this substance called adenosine triphosphate, which is the fuel of the cell. And so these things, and these mitochondria may have at one time in evolution been another organism that perhaps became symbiotic with cells. But most cells, what they call eukaryotic cells, that is true cells that have a cell wall and a nucleus, as opposed to prokaryotic cells that don't have any of that sort of stuff. These nuclei and these true prokaryotic cells, they are possessed of two different kinds of DNA. So they've got mitochondrial DNA, and then in the nucleus they have the nuclear DNA, and that's the DNA that is derived by the Y or X chromosome contributed by your father, or by the one of the two X chromosomes contributed by your mother. And so essentially in the Atacama humanoid, the humanoid or the DNA that was derived from the father has never been examined. No one knows who or what the father was. Okay.
Wow.
So, I mean, so the nuclear DNA has not been sequenced to my knowledge. If I'm wrong about that, please correct me if someone knows something different. But so we know from the mitochondrial DNA that this was a human female, and that this creature had a human mother. Can you imagine having a child this size at 6 years? I don't know what it was like around their house, but the nuclear DNA, that is the DNA that makes us, who we are, it prescribes our hair color, eye color, and how big we are, and all those things that we inherit from our parents. That has not been sequenced, and so we still don't have an idea of who the father of this particular creature was. Now, was it a hybrid? Clear. There you go, right there. The science, that Gary Nolan would say, well, it's human, but curiously, it's less human than a chimpanzee. So we, looking at the DNA and so forth. So is it human? Well, we certainly share a large amount of DNA in common with this creature. And so is it inherent in the earth? Is it indigenous to the earth? I think that's a possibility, and I'm going to toss another thing out here. But I think
tossing, Richard.
Okay, all right.
Toss away.
I think that there is a real possibility that there is an indigenous population of these creatures living in the Atacama Desert, in caves, and in vast underground locations in the Atacama Desert, in the high Atacama Desert. The reason I say that is because this is not the only specimen.
Well, then, could these be like fairies, Richard?
Well,
fairies. I mean, they're small enough.
Well, I think you could certainly. I think you could certainly look back in history and say, well, the fairies might have been these tiny little creatures, right. And if you talk to Jacques Vallée, he'll say that that this phenomenon, that the UFO phenomenon, paranormal phenomenon, have evolved with us, so that back then fairies or angels or whatever are now aliens. I think, but I think in this particular case, and in these particular regions of the Atacama Desert, the indigenous population there says that they see UFOs coming and going all the time, and there are folks who have gone down into those caves and they've retrieved additional specimens other than this one, smaller, non-human specimens, living specimens that I think are still in the possession of the Chilean government.
Wait a minute, did you say living specimens?
I meant recently living within the last 100 years. This little 6-inch creature had only been dead for about 100 years or 60 years. It was not an ancient thing. This thing had lived within the last 100 years, and that's why I say I think that there's a real possibility that there is an indigenous population of these kinds of creatures living in the deep Atacama Desert. And why there? Well, it's such a remote location. There is no food or water there. You can't grow anything there. And so if you wanted to stay far away from human beings, that would be a perfect place to do it, because the only way to get there aren't really any airports nearby. You have to, get a 4-wheel drive vehicle with plenty of spare tires and drive there. And of course, you'd want to, But I do think that there's a real possibility. And are these aliens? I don't know. Do they represent another kind of human being, or what you might call an ultra terrestrial? I don't know.
Oh. I have so many visions going through my head right now of these little beings and these little crabs with the little. I don't mean to make light of it or joke, but just so many questions and so many thoughts. It's so interesting.
I think if you look at that phenomenon, the little people phenomenon with these little creatures like that, you'll see that even in American history, there was one that was recently, I want to say within the last 50 years or so, that was discovered right here in Wyoming. One of these little people, and they according to legend here in Wyoming, live in the caves and so forth.
Right.
And so, but I think at least in the Atacama Desert, I think that it would be possible for an indigenous population of whatever these things are to remain hidden for a really long time.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Don't even get us started on the giants. But since you're from Wyoming, and I know you knew Leo, and you lived in Cheyenne, the Francis Warren Air Force Base, and we only have 7 minutes left of the show. So Chris is right. We need to have you back on. But that was a massive sighting event. Do you know much about that case? And can you tell us a little bit about it if you do?
Well, I think that there's been more than one event over F.E. Warren Air Force Base, and I think what you're talking about is the one. Was it the one in 2008 or 2010?
No, this one was back in the late 50s, early 60s.
Oh, wow, it's really weird that you should bring that up because it was actually in 1965 or 66. And man, it's really weird that you would bring that up because I say I've never seen a UFO, but I have this really weird, because we lived in Cheyenne at that time, and I have this really weird memory of seeing this large ring of lights. And I was in my dad's blue Oldsmobile, and my parents had broken up, and he had me waiting in the car for some reason, and I want to say that I might have seen that thing.
Oh,
but it was just such a long time ago, and I was such a little kid and knowing now about UFOs and about that incident, part of me says, well, maybe it's a false memory, But I am aware of that incident, and I know that. It scared a heck of a lot of people, and this UFO, to my understanding, was basically a huge craft, with a ring of lights around it that appeared over the base. And this is in 1965 or 66, I think, is when that happened. But since that time, there have been some incidents, and one in particular where I think Robert Hastings also investigated that case where the missiles were shut down. Mm-hmm. And the the explanation for it was that there was a circuit in a control panel that had gone bad, and so the response really is, well, so are you saying that you can shut down a whole missile field of 50 nuclear Minuteman missiles with a bad circuit? That didn't make a lot of sense. It seems that those systems are redundant, and so you can't just shut down one and then shut them all down. They have to be shut down simultaneously. Anyway, but as far as the 1965 incident and the 80s incident, or the 2008 or 2010 incident, I know a little bit about them, but I know that they scared a heck of a lot of people.
Right. And witnessed by so many credible witnesses there on the base. So I was just curious about that.
Yeah.
Rich, we don't have a lot of time left, but I want to ask you about the Pat McGuire hypnotic session. What do you think about that?
Well, that was a really weird experience too. So I had recently become a news director at the local radio station, and I was already really interested in UFOs. And so the first thing that I wanted to do was a week-long special on UFOs. And I had a nemesis at that time. His name was Roger Taylor. And he was an astronomer he was actually an English teacher, and he taught astronomy at the local college. And so he was always telling me how crazy I was and so forth. But I did this week-long special on UFOs, and the way and what I did was I traveled to Laramie, and I got to know Leo. And this was at the time when he was doing. It just so happened that he was putting on one of his contactee conferences at the time. So we went to that, and I think actually that I'm not sure if Dr. Greer was at that one, but so I started going to these contactee conferences. Well, I recorded interviews with Leo and so forth, and then we met Pat McGuire, and Leo was so sweet. I mean, he didn't need to, spend all this time with us, but and with me, but and invite me so deeply into the world that he was in. But anyway, we were there at the counseling center at the University of Wyoming, and Pat McGuire was there, and we got to meet Pat McGuire. And then there was a psychic there by the name of Elaine Fortson. I'll never forget her, because we had a little bit of an interaction when our little session was over. But we sat there, and Dr. and I think I actually recorded it. I've been looking all over for this tape, but this is like 1979 or 80. This is a long time ago. And so we had this regressive hypnosis session, and basically I was just a fly on the wall. I brought my best friend with me, who was helping me carry some equipment and so forth. And so we actually witnessed this regressive hypnosis session with Pat McGuire, who, and Katie, you may at some point have to explain to these guys who Pat McGuire was, but he was essentially an abductee, one of the early abductees, and Leo was one of the early pioneers of regressive hypnosis to get to the bottom of these sorts of things. And
the McGuire Ranch was a big location with a lot of activity at McGuire Ranch. So
yeah, that's right. Yeah, we stayed out there with an ABC film crew for about 4 days. Right. And and it was kind of neat because Leo was there, and then we were staying up late at night, and Pat was regaling us with, tales of, his abduction experiences out there on the ranch. They had a big well out there that he believed the ETs had told him to dig, and he put they told him to put it in a place that all the geologists told him they were never going to find water, and he drilled this hole anyway, and he bought this big, like, old World War II tank and took the motor off of it and used that to pump, and everybody just thought he was nuts, and he ended up drilling into an offshoot of the Ogallala Aquifer.
Oh my gosh. We're down to the last minute and a half here, but oh my gosh, we need to have you back just to get into the McGuire Ranch, because that is fascinating, that whole story. Richard, it's been a pleasure having you on here, and we hope to see you. You'll probably be at the MUFON Symposium in Ohio, so I hope to see you there. You have anything else going on in like 15 seconds? Like, where else?
Well, no, just I think I would tell you that there are some really exciting things that are going to be happening with MUFON in the next few weeks, and just keep your ears to the ground.
That's true. Great change is coming. All right. Well, thank you to Chris, Jerry, and Jenna. Thank you, Tara. Thank you to our producer, Amanda Curran, and thank you to Bill Skywatcher. Thank you to all our listeners out there, and I hope you have a fantastic week. Time to go have some hot tea, some soup, and some toast with butter, and we will see you next Tuesday. Have a good week, everybody. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.